My favorite.
It's Judd's Hockey Show.
I'm not even close to anything right now. I haven't even got into that yet. But you know what? Our coaches are good. Like I said, there's been a lot to be made about our special teams. They were good in the regular season, and I think what Dean said, you have to give Dallas some credit on having a really good power play. So that's where I am on that.
So much to unpack. Judd's Hockey Show. Judd, executive producer Declan Goff, and then, of course, Jessi Pierce, who joins us weekly and joining us today to talk about so much that has gone on since the Wild bowed out in Game 6 on Friday in a rather lifeless performance that rightfully so got them booed off the ice at one point. You just heard a clip from a 36-minute press conference, season ending, that Dean Evason and Bill Guerin did. That, of course, was Guerin yesterday. And that question was from Michael Russo of The Athletic, in particular pertaining to have there been any decisions made on assistant coaches. I don't think Dean's job was asked about because Dean was sitting right there. Jessi Pierce, welcome aboard. A ton to unpack here. Let's just start here. What was your takeaway from Bill Guerin? Is feisty. Like, he's just a feisty dude, which is fun. He gave an opening statement yesterday that I found interesting because he basically talked about the salary cap issues, what the Wild is up against, things that he ordinarily does not bring up. And he didn't apologize for it, but he definitely brought that up. And then the first question from Russo was something along the lines of, how do you get over the playoff hump? Which is an incredibly fair question. And Dean bristled about that and said, what do you want us to do? What's the hump are you talking about? Our goal is not the second round. Or Bill did. All sort of surprised me because it was sort of very un-Guerin-like. What was your takeaway from how the Wild is processing the end of another disappointing playoff run that was far too short?
I mean, hilariously enough, I actually walked in a smidge late to yesterday's press conference. So I walk in to exactly that. I was like, what have I missed? Like, I was hoping that maybe there were fireworks, but no, I had walked in right at the right time. Yeah, you're right, Judd. It was odd because Bill Guerin doesn't necessarily get that prickly about things. And it is an absolutely fair question. And kudos to Russo for continuing to follow up on it, saying, hey, you can't get to the Stanley Cup, though, if you don't get past this first round. Like, that needs to be step one. Step two is obviously second round and so on and so forth. And yeah, the way that Guerin got defensive has you wondering, has you questioning. And, I had followed up with a question asking, like, so are we lowering expectations then? Yeah. Are we lowering that? And I think that's fair. And of course, Guerin says, no, we want to make the playoffs, yada, yada. But at the same time, what do you want to do here? You're talking about building for the future. It's a lot of lip service going in different directions. I think what really bothered me about Guerin's response yesterday was saying that it's a narrative created by the media that they can't get out of the first round. Like, it's not. It's everybody has seen it. We're witnessing this time and time again. And it's not something we're just making up. We don't want to talk about it anymore. I think there's a way to approach it. I think Marc-Andre Fleury said it best during the player exit interviews on Monday, saying, no, we don't want to we need to stop talking about getting out of the first round. We need to stop worrying about it, right? And I think Ryan Hartman also saying we need to follow up and do it. But Bill Guerin didn't give me a whole lot of confidence. And I'm wondering if his defensiveness is up because he's feeling that heat finally. It's going from 12 million to 14.7 or something like that for the cap hits on those buyouts, which again, he doesn't regret. And I don't think fans should regret either. I think it's worked out for the long term, but it's handcuffed him maybe more than he believed. It's made his job maybe harder than he imagined. And of course, he's a guy that's going to stand pat with his decisions, as he should as a general manager. But yeah, his tone yesterday to kick things off certainly was a bit harsher than we're used to. He did calm down after that, and I think gave some fair answers. And even then he did, but it's interesting to see how he perceived the team to have, quote unquote, been a disappointment, but not a failure.
Bill Guerin's a friend of the show. He's come on Judd's Hockey Show before. He has called out Declan. He's even called out Judd. He's called out both of us. Both of us are buffoonery takes or questions that we've had. He's not afraid to call us out. But yeah, I push back on the narrative of that's the media's narrative. We can't get out the first round. I mean, Bill, you've lost 8 straight playoff series. Whether you've only been a part of half of those, which that's true, but it's been 8 straight exits in the playoffs, going back even to when you did make the second round. So there's no narrative. That's just a cold, hard statistic that's slapping the Wild in the face right there. And if he's trying to say, and I know he kind of alluded to this too, that you don't get the Stanley Cup for getting to the second round, which is true, and that is kind of what Wild fans have been asking for, just like Twins fans asking to win a playoff game. That's the baseline of what we've been trying to get to here. So I get that answer from Bill Guerin. I even side with them that you don't get the cup for making the second round. But at the same time, Bill, there's no narrative being played there. I mean, this has been a legitimate problem, and now it's become kind of a laughing stock and just a fear of, well, another Wild season down the drain after making the playoffs again.
I also felt too like Bill was, so the season came to an end in Game 6 on Friday. The press conference was Tuesday, and Jessi, I feel like he was defensively prepared. Like he clearly had given thought to this. And at one point he said, "I want to credit the players because they are also hamstrung by this cap." Which, by the way, they weren't at the deadline. Go back; they had room because of how the cap works. And where I guess I disagree with Bill, but I think he's defensive because of this is Brodin and Spurgeon and that entire group didn't have a bad playoff because of cap problems. They had a bad playoff. Kaprizov and Boldy, they had a bad playoff because they had a bad playoff. And I understand trying to defend your team. I'm with you. One, I think he's feeling heat, rightfully so. Two, there is no way on God's green earth that he didn't watch Dean get schooled by Pete DeBoer and think, you know what? This is a reoccurring theme. Pete DeBoer, Berube, Pete DeBoer again. So he looked to me like a guy who was defensive but also hadn't slept a lot. And I mean, I wrote this. I think the Wild right now, and Bill in particular, Jess, is at a pivotal crossroads here. Like it's decision time, and this whole thing of, well, we're just going to try to win. Your question was spot on, and I think he knows that your question was right, and I think that bothers him because he wants to compete. But it might not be time to compete now. It might be time to accept your fate and build off of that, which, by the way, might end up being the best long play possible.
Which I think the concerning part in that, I mean, and Bill Guerin answered my question with, it's not a rebuild, and he's reiterated that he's not doing a rebuild, and it hasn't been. The little pieces that he's moved here and there have not qualified as a rebuild. We're not going full Chicago on it, blowing everything up, certainly, and I don't think they need to. My concern is while you're playing the long game, you still have Kirill Kaprizov for only a limited amount of time, and you're not only wasting some of his prime years, you're having his eyes open saying, hey, I don't want to be here if you're not going to be able to afford to give me some of the pieces that I need to succeed, that I need to win. And now, granted, that's not letting Kaprizov off the hook for being fairly absent throughout the playoffs. I think he was one of the better players still, even if it didn't show on the score sheet, which of course you want Kirill Kaprizov to be scoring on the score sheet. But I think he still did some other things that I'm not completely on board, just bombing and dragging him down. Matt Boldy, different situation. But yeah, I mean, while you're playing that long game, it doesn't seem that he has a true plan. I don't think, Marco Rossi's not as far along as they wanted him to be. Kalen Addison hasn't farsed out as much as they want. Brock Faber so far looks like he's going to be a very, very good defenseman in the National Hockey League for some time to come. So, I mean, that's panned out. Philip Gustafson's panned out. But, some of those other pieces that you wish and hope for. And that's always kind of my criticism in the National Hockey League is you're drafting these guys at 18 years old. It's not something that you can really know when they're going to be ready. It's very rare that you're going to be seeing 18, 19-year-old ready to step into the NHL. Those that do it are absolutely another level of player. So while you're looking at playing for the cheap players and building out your prospects, is it going to work? I don't know at this point. And again, you have two very hard years that you just have to get through. But that's 2 more years of Kirill's contract wasted as well.
Mm-hmm. On Jesse's point too, on prospects, and this is something I've said to Judd numerous times, because hockey and baseball are the same, developmental leagues, if you will. Like there's prospects that you have to develop in your own minor league system, and some fans get in love with prospects, and typically prospects never hit their truest ceiling. That doesn't mean that they can't be, sustainable players. Ryan Hartman was a first-round pick. Ryan Hartman never reached his full ceiling, but Ryan Hartman is a solid NHL player, right? That, more than likely than not, those first-round picks become Ryan Hartman. Now, certainly, top overall draft picks have a much higher percentage of hitting that ceiling than someone that's in the mid-tier of the first round. But typically, when we're doing prospect hunting of, oh, well, they drafted this guy 9th overall, Marco Rossi, and he has a tier or he has a ceiling of being this guy and he's doing so well in Iowa and this is going to completely happen. It's not guaranteed. So now, is that the Wild's failing to develop them? Maybe. But sometimes I think fans get way too obsessed with the number one comp or the number one tier or the number one ceiling for prospects. And then when that player doesn't hit their ceiling, that they think it's complete disappointment or that player is not giving the 100% full opportunity to be the player that he is at the NHL level. So therefore, it's all management's fault. It's not always that way. And I think sometimes fans kind of get confused and lost in the sauce a little bit in that.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, as example A, Marco Rossi needs to play here next season. And he can't have 15 games and Dean's like, all right, he's not prepared to play yet. Who's a veteran off the jalopy heap I can, because that's what Dean loves to do. And Dean loves guys who are Dean. This is, in my opinion, this is where we come to a very important part because, and Bill, in Guerin's comments, he talked about, I'd love to speed this up by 2 years and be there. But dude, you are up against the cap. I'm guessing from what he said towards the end, Jess, that he's going to have to trade a veteran or two, like they're just to pay the payroll. But also you're very much in a position where you're going to have to speed some guys' development. And in Rossi's case, it ain't speeding. Like we've got 2 years now of not prepared yet. Marco Rossi, there is nothing left for him to do in Iowa. Like he could go score 100 goals and I don't give a crap. So they are now at that critical juncture where like you need to put Rossi top 6 and find out. He's going to be 21?
Mm-hmm.
So he's getting old for an ascending prospect hockey player. This whole Dean thing of, no, I'm going back to my guy Hartman or no, dude, you tried it and you bowed out in 6 games, 2 consecutive years. It's go time now to find out what guys have. And if you don't like that, then you are not the right coach for my team. My team needs to find out because to your point, Jess, and this is the important thing, the whole Kaprizov thing, you can't just keep recycling guys that Dean loves around Kirill. You've got to see if you can maximize players' talent. And in this case, it's a pretty damn good prospect pool.
Yeah, exactly. And that's just it. The prospect pool has been touted as number 1 the past 2 years. I mean, it's been in the top 3 even longer. They just fired all of Iowa's coaching last week for failing to advance in the playoffs. So now you look at, okay, who are you going to bring in to help create these players? I mean, there are some other ones outside of Marco Rossi, obviously gets the most notoriety. I believe he is the highest, but they have other prospects that are good. There's also that other Russian coming in who hopefully decides to come over for the HL. I'm not sure if he's made his decision on what he's going to do next year, but he's another one that I think fans should be excited about, that you want to try to expedite as best you can to get to that NHL level. I love Bill Guerin's approach of developing properly. I love that. Mm-hmm. I love that from youth hockey all the way up. You cannot speed up a player's development. It's a man's game. You need to be sure that they are ready. You also need to give them the opportunities to try and see what's there. Game 6 would have been a fine opportunity. You felt their backs were up against the wall anyway. Why not see what Marco Rossi can bring? You've already seen Sam Steele was kind of meh. I mean, nobody was playing good enough to say that they deserved to necessarily be out there tried and true. You had very few players that you couldn't mess with. Sundqvist and Marco Rossi are there. Why not give them a go and see what could happen, right? Especially Sundqvist, who is a veteran player who knows how to get through the playoffs. And again, that goes back to the coaching decisions. Judd, you had mentioned that, the question was tacked on. We laughed because the day before us little media cohorts chatted about how we wanted to approach the Bill Guerin, Dean Evason thing, because it's very awkward to have your GM and your coach go at the same time when you want to talk about maybe mistakes that the coach made, right? Again, we all like Dean, it's a respect thing. You don't want to throw somebody under the bus and see their direct reaction. But right. I think it was meant to address the entire coaching staff. I think Guerin took it more as the assistants, probably because Dean's sitting there, but also the more I'm learning kind of about how Bill Guerin's thought process is, I think Dean is probably safe. Whether he should be or not, I have a sense that he's safe. The rest of the assistants might be cleaned out. But again, that a coaching change would be a wholesale change that I think this team needs to change direction in general. You maybe need somebody else who's seen things differently, who's seen these players differently, who doesn't feel that Matt Zuccarello, Ryan Hartman, Kirill Kaprizov need to be on the same line no matter what. Those are the kind of things. And I love to kind of finish up here and let somebody else speak. I know you guys love hearing me speak, but
No, it's good stuff.
you know, but no, I think you look at the unrestricted free agents and then you look at some of the longtime veterans. A lot of them have no move clauses, which is going to make things a little bit difficult. You can certainly ask the player to do that, but that's where it scratches my head. Like, well, who do you move? I mean, there are players that I think should be moved, and I will save that for toward our end here, but a lot of them have those no moves. So then that becomes a sticky situation, but I think Guerin will be active this summer in making something work because he has to. Right now, he doesn't have the money to even have recalls from Iowa heading into next year.
And he looked depressed about that. In fact, let's transition next to Dean and also what you just talked about with players possibly being moved. But before we do that, I want to talk to you about my friends and Jessi's too at Livia Weight Control Centers, who have done right by us. More than a year ago now, I joined, dropped 40 pounds, but the most important thing is sustainable weight loss, because you know what? We've all done the fad diet. Guess what? We gain that weight back. But in this case, their dietitians and nutritionists are fantastic. And Jessi, first 3 months right now are free. Tell the people what you have learned in your ongoing process with the fine folks from Livia.
I am absolutely loving it. I'll admit, first week was hard. It sucked. I love my bread. I love my beer, the carbs, you guys. But so far, now over 4 weeks in, it's been phenomenal. I don't even really miss it that much. The food is so good. They have this PBJ bar, Judd.
Oh, their bars are great. I love the bars.
So freaking good. Yes, and then they've got these little energy packets as well that I'm constantly having on the go. It's been tremendous, and just the support that they offer too. Even if you have a bad week, a bad day, what have you, it happens. We're human, but I love the support that they give. And then I'm loving stepping on the scale each and every week and seeing that number go little by little down. It's been sustainable. Couldn't be more proud of what they offer.
Beautiful. 855-GO LIVEA, Livia.com, LIVEA.com. Check it out for yourself. Again, the first 3 months are free. All right. First question, we'll start with Dex. Dex knows my views here, but I'm done with Dean. Like, as far as a playoff coach goes, I'm just done. I've seen enough. The lack of success with the Predators AHL affiliate, 4 series losses, first round, 1-12. The lack of success here. Declan, do you, at the end of the day, agree? Are you as done as I am with Dean, especially if this is perceived to be a playoff team?
I'm done in that just vein, in the vacuum of it. Yeah, I don't believe they'll move on from him. I don't think Craig and ownership wants to continue to pay people not to be employed by them as much anymore, especially with these buyouts going up again a little bit for Imprezi and Suter. Yeah, I can't take it seriously now that it's 3 years in a row of basically the same thing, same adjustments that have not been made. Yeah, I think this team needs to be led by someone else at this point. And, I think Guerin gave Evason the benefit of the doubt. He removed the interim label during the pandemic and said, this guy's going to be our head coach. We're not even going to do really a full search or not. And at the time, it actually worked out really well. They've been a great regular season team, but now we've seen basically 3 examples in the playoffs where Dean has been completely outcoached, twice by Peter DeBoer, that they have to probably make a change to be taken a little bit more seriously in the playoffs. And you only get so many cracks at it. I made the comparison to the San Jose Sharks before, where guys like Todd McClellan or Peter DeBoer had really good hockey teams in the regular season, but sometimes couldn't get it done or couldn't get deep enough in the playoffs. And I think the Wild are probably going to be better served looking for a better coach to kind of make those proper adjustments come playoff time.
I think the thought process there with having Dean seemed great because he was this American Hockey League coach, developing players, had been there with a lot of the guys that are now on the team. And for whatever reason, that style didn't transcend. Now, all of a sudden, I'm in the NHL and we're going to play the guys that I really like. I think that's what bothers me the most. It's the same thing that bothers you, Judd and Dex. It's the lack of willingness to change and do something different. Even heading into training camp, you last maybe a week or two of a different look, and then it goes right back to what it was last year, which I joke, yes, it makes my Lions job much, much easier when I know, but you need to be willing to try something new. You need to be willing to be fluid and adjust when things aren't working. And surprise, surprise, Dean, things did not work. Again, it doesn't matter. Nobody cares about your regular season. Ask the Boston Bruins. Nobody cares about how good you do there. It matters what happens at the end of April, and Dean just hasn't been able to get the job done. It does make me wonder how active Bill Guerin will be in this offseason, if he is moving some of those veteran pieces, that will force Dean to be more, fluid in what he's doing, more willing to change. He's going to have to. I mean, I was excited. This is going to sound terrible. When we speculated Matt Zuccarello would be out for game 6, I was like, yes, that means he's got to do some new lines. He's got to change things up. And while he tweaked things, they were very minor. I mean, at the end of the day, that could be what's best is if you can't move on from Dean, move on from some of the players that he's so married to and see what happens.
And that shouldn't have to be the thing, though. Like, that's what's frustrating about it. Like, you shouldn't have to tell him. It shouldn't be surprising. And I think it was to all three of us and Wild fans that Brock Faber actually played.
Yeah.
Like, in an ordinary circumstance, it's like, of course he played. He's a good player. But I was like, oh, my God, they're playing him. This is fantastic. I thought they might, but I wasn't sure. So that's problem one. Problem two is the playoff problem, which is just a lack of adjustments. And I'm sure that Bill was involved in this, but the still baffling decision to start Fleury 2 days after Gus made 51 saves. Special teams, and I don't care that you were good on special teams in the regular season. All those adjustments were made because the Blues did you last year. And yes, the Stars have a good power play, but this is the playoffs, ladies and gentlemen. I'm watching the Kraken now, play the Stars last night, doing all the things the Wild didn't do.
And they did it with Joe Pavelski in the lineup, scoring 4 goals.
Four goals.
My goodness.
And yesterday, Bill basically said, and he's not wrong, but it's eye-opening, that Matt Boldy doesn't know how to play in the playoffs yet. He essentially said, what he does in the regular season don't work. And yeah, we've all known that. But I mean, these are just, to me, all red flags, all problems with coaching. The lack of adjustments drove me crazy. Jess, to your point, the line juggling he did. He flipped Zuccarello. He flipped
Johansson.
For a brief time, he flipped JoJo and Zuccarello, and that was it. So, yeah, I've just seen enough. And if he's going to come back, and I think that both you and Dex are right, he will. But he has to be it can't be Sam Steele who's going to play.
Mm-hmm.
I love Sam Steele. He works hard every day at practice. Okay, dude, that's not going to win you a Stanley Cup. So it's just, to me, I'm just at a breaking point. And I see the same mistakes over and over and over. And I don't even know who the right coach is. But, how maddening you guys are the playoffs to watch right now. They're fantastic. They're wide open. Like, as far as we don't know who's going to win. Florida beats Boston. And yet the Wild, like Phil said, and he's right, the only predictable thing about the National Hockey League playoffs is the Wild. They're predictably out.
Yeah.
Really
Toronto.
works
Gus
me out.
Nyquist said that too. He's like, that's where it's most disappointing. You look at how wide open. And again, even if Colorado we're still in it, I think what Seattle showed and what Florida showed in particular is that with hard work and with a little bit of grit and passion all combined into one, you can move on in the series. It doesn't matter who you play. And that's where the players, I asked a few of them and they obviously disagreed with me, as they should, but I asked, mentally, did you guys feel like you were completely checked in? Because that's what I thought the difference was. I think Dallas, yes, very good. Yes, better, more elite players probably, and a better coach. But they seemed dialed in each and every night, whereas Minnesota didn't. I mean, there is zero excuse or zero reason to let one goal that is scored early on in the first period of an elimination game to completely deflate you and to have you come out with nothing else at all until maybe the third period. Like, it was that. And those were things that you saw during the regular season at times too, where it's like, oh, we're just going to sit back. It's fine. Yes. We'll figure it out. Like, I don't know if that goal stems from last year and all the come from behind victories that they had, yada, yada. If they relied on goaltending too much, I don't know. But it just felt like there was a lack of will and drive. And as much as the players can tell me there wasn't, then what was wrong? Because you do have the skill and the ability to be better than how they performed.
Go ahead, Dex.
Yeah, and I think with the trade deadline acquisitions that they made and those tweaks that they made to their roster at the deadline, which all kind of took us by surprise, there was, not an embarrassment of riches, but there was problems with us trying to figure out, well, where do these guys fit in? Where does Nyquist fit in? Where does Boldy fit in with Johansson and whatnot? So we were trying to figure out and piecemeal this roster together. And throughout the course of the playoffs, I thought Matt Zuccarello was the worst player on the ice for the Wild. I know he had a big game 3 and scored a big time goal to get things going, and that led to a win. But I thought he was terrible. And the fact that you didn't move up Nyquist to play with Kaprizov, who obviously was mostly on a wanted poster the entire series, that's where it's frustrating because there was examples I thought, and we can all play armchair GMs where you have Wild fans, you have media members, you have podcast hosts basically yelling at their TV to tell Dean what to do here. And he's just kind of going with the shrug emoji of, well, we tried. And it's like, no, you didn't try at all. There's easy suggestions to make, and he didn't make them. And that's what was so frustrating.
You just play the style of Minnesota Wild plays.
Right.
The style the Minnesota Wild plays this way. Anybody can play with anybody in a Wild jersey.
Yep. Right. No, Dean. 97, 12. You need more. Last thing. Start with Jess on this one. Who do you think is gone? Like Bill. I don't think he's joking. I think, to pay this out to get enough players to play within the cap. Dumba will be allowed to leave, obviously, which I'm fine with. But who do you think is gone? Who's going to at least surprise some? Or multiple? I don't know.
Yeah, it's a great question. Again, I haven't even looked at who has what in their contracts. I do think, unfortunately. Yep. All of the UFAs that were signed will probably walk. I don't think you can afford Nyquist. You don't need to bring back Klingberg. Ryan Reeves, you might possibly bring back. If you bring back Ryan Reeves, people are going to hate me. I'm going to say it. Marcus Foligno is out. Again, I think he might have a no move, but you don't need two of those types of players. And Marcus is probably a little bit more money. I don't like saying it, people. I love Marcus Foligno. I love what he does in the locker room. I love what he does for the state, yada, yada. Yes, this is true. But it's a numbers game at this point. So that would be one. I know people have floated the idea of Jared Spurgeon, myself included. His contract is pricey. He's got his no move set in place. I think if anything, you strip him of the C and try something new in that perspective. But those two names, I think, float near the top for me. And again, it's just because it's a numbers situation. And those positions are very replaceable at cheaper areas. I mean, those are ones that you could. Freddie Gaudreau, I'd say too, but that's probably not going to happen.
No.
I know.
Oh, are you going to get a death stare from the coach next time you see him?
That's all right.
That's basically his son, his adopted son. My God. Declan?
Foligno is the one that really stuck out to me too. He's a great character guy, but I don't know if they can continue to pay a guy who's 31 years of age to the point of no offensive production. And he was kind of playing out of his skis a little bit from a goal scoring perspective 2 seasons ago and last season. He might be the one that's trimmed, and that might be the first message of, no one's really safe in this locker room, and we have to make some type of adjustments. And I think Foligno's probably one that it wouldn't surprise me at all. I mean, could you let go of Foligno and bring back Sundqvist, for the same price, if not cheaper? Like, I wouldn't be surprised if that's a possibility. So I think a guy like Foligno, unfortunately, is probably the easiest one to get rit of because there's just nothing on the contract that says you can't. So that's where I would probably go. I probably think Marcus Foligno's played his last game with the Wild.
And according to Cat Friendly, Marcus Foligno has no protection on trades.
There you go.
So he would be a simple one to trade as far as that goes. You're right, Jesse. Spurgeon and a bunch of the defensemen have protection, and Spurgeon's got a full no move clause. So that would be tough. I would trade him well before Brodin, though. And Brodin had a bad playoff too, but I would keep him. And if I'm not mistaken, they do have a potential plethora of defensive talent coming up the pipeline. Mm-hmm. So
Damien Giroux is a fantastic defenseman that's been down in Iowa that's seen a little bit here and there, that I think he's one that's certainly touted to try to make a push for a spot come out of camp next year.
He's cheap as well. I wonder what you can get for Hartman. He's got 2 years left. It's very, very cheap. 1.7 mil per season. He has no protection too. And he's a guy I would love to strip the coach from because he likes him too much. Like, Ryan Hartman is not a first line center. He's just not. He is a nice player. He works his butt off. He is a competitor. He would be great on a Stanley Cup contender, like as a third line guy on the wing or potentially, I guess, at center. But I'm with you. I'd like to eliminate some of Dean's guys so that they're just gone.
Right.
And he has to play. He's forced to actually go back to his roots when he was coaching in the Predators system, where he's forced to develop people. because you're right. It feels like his whole default is, well, if I can go, if I can get my guy back here, I'm gonna, Sam Steele. Why
Yeah.
was you're right about that? Why was Sam Steele playing? Because he plays hard,
Yeah.
not hard
Again,
enough to help you win.
at the beginning, he earned that right? Toward the end of the regular season when he stepped in, he did. He played fine. He's had a very up and down season. He's a young guy, gave him a shot, but there's no reason you can't be stuck on it. Nobody's super gluing you to any of these players or any of these people. Like,
I like it.
I think I can't help but think of the Moneyball line where he's like, you can't play Giambi tonight. Giambi's gone. I could do this all day. Like, I
Yep,
mean,
you're
get rid
right.
of him and like you
Yes.
can't play him. Then if that's what you have to do, and
Art Howe, you're right.
It's
That's a
just-
great comp.
right, like that's
Dean's
all
like-
I can think about. Yeah.
Sorry, Dean, I just traded your roster, man. That's not right. Yeah, it is right. All right, final thing. Start with Jesse, then Dex. Is this season a failure? Because Bill was very, very defensive about that. Is the season a failure?
The only reason I say no, and it's not because Giannis had such a metaphorical way of
yeah.
announcing a season as a failure, which I do love in the grand scheme. It's not because I think they exceeded expectations, and crazy enough as it is. I really didn't think that they would get into the playoffs as cleanly as they did. I didn't expect as much from them because to me, they lost bigger names, bigger scorers last year from this year. You know what I mean? So it was a different squad. So no, it's not a failure because I just didn't think they were never built for a deep run anyway. So I hate to say that my bar was low to begin with, but it was. It's a Minnesota team. So to me, not a failure. Sucks, disappointing, yes, but here we are again.
Failure. Yeah, it's a failure. It's a big time failure. They ran things back last year and said, the depth. Remember the depth, which I also mocked of like, oh, you're so deep. Well, where the hell's your talent? Depth is great. Okay, there's a lot of
You and Anthony Carter.
There's a lot of prospects. There's a lot of options out there, but is there any top end guys you're gonna be able to rely upon to do this? And look, I thought the Wild did a successful trades and at the deadline. I thought the Ryan Reeves trade was solid, and there was certainly successful moments where you found out that Philip Gustafson's someone to be relied upon. But you had a good chance, in my opinion, to beat the Stars. You went up 2-1. It wasn't like the Stars were this big juggernaut and you lucked your way into 2 wins. For the second straight year, you had a chance to put a team away, and you didn't, and you fell flat on your face. You lose 3 straight games. You get embarrassed at home. 100% failure in capital letters stapled and stamped on your forehead, dude.
Flying through the sky like on
Yes.
the back of a plane.
State of failures. That might be the new motto right there.
Oh, sad.
I'm with Declan because of this. It's a failure because Bill Guerin went for it at the deadline to at least win a round.
Fair.
So like if he hadn't made those trades, because I mean that was a borderline. There was one point where I'm like, stick a fork in this team. They weren't playing well. It just
Comes about
wasn't
January every year,
Yeah,
I think, right?
Exactly. They hit the lull. We were told we're still the Wild. You don't understand. But then when you trade for Johansson and Nyquist, Klingberg, and that list of guys, Sundqvist, who should have played more. That was definitely we're going for it. Like we're gonna try to win. And you watch the playoffs and teams are winning rounds. I'm very disappointed. And I do think that it's a failure. And because of that now, I would tell Bill, don't get cute again, man. Don't try and sign anybody beyond your own guys at the deadline next year. I don't care how much cap space we have. You got to suck it up and play these guys. Because I'm done with providing Dean the ammunition to go for it, to see him in the spring handle every game like it's January the 5th.
Mm-hmm.
Failure. New coach time. How's that for? I'm not happy.
I hope they put that in the next Wild video for a soundbite.
Yeah, I might be out with the sound bites. And you know what? I apologize, but someday, kids in St. Paul, you'll realize Sports Dad was right. Okay? So when you're celebrating a Stanley Cup championship, you can play this damn soundbite then, because Bill Guerin will say, you know what? Ultimately, Judd was right. That's how it's going to end.
What a way to end an episode.
End of story. Jesse, thanks much. We'll talk to you soon, I'm sure, because we'll have stuff going on. But that's a good way to put a lid on a season that was a failure to some of us. But I mean, that's fine. Declan, take us home.
You hit the subscribe button for Daily Minnesota Sports Entertainment right here on SKOR North. This is Judd's Hockey Show. Head on over to Purple Daily for daily Vikings entertainment as well. and pass, shoot, score.